This interview is sponsored by Visionary Metals. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decision. Hello, everybody. Welcome into Commodity Culture. My name is Jesse Day. Today is August 11th, 2026, and my guest is the CEO of Visionary Metals, an exploration company advancing 2 nickel and copper sulfide projects in Wyoming and exploring a copper gold porphyry project in Utah. It's Wesley Adams. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks for having me on. Uh, yeah, great to dive into what Visionary is doing in Wyoming and Utah and why we're excited about our upcoming drill program.
Yeah, I cannot wait to dive into that. Before we do, I want to start with a high-level overview of the critical minerals and metals space, because there's obviously a lot going on geopolitically. We were talking about it off camera before we began recording, but the supply chain is changing around the world at this point in time. How are you thinking about the growing recognition of the importance of critical minerals worldwide and the strain on supply chains currently underway?
Well, we're seeing the U.S. make a big push to fund critical metals projects in and especially domestic ones. Copper is really dominating the conversation right now. We're seeing genuine strain on supply, tight concentrate sales, Chinese smelting bottlenecks, and then interruptions that keep showing up in the market. Some of those are geopolitical, and some of them are supply chain oriented, right? Nickel is a smaller market, but it's just as sensitive to those kind of disruptions. And we saw that, during the beginning of the Ukraine contract when it spiked to 100,000 a ton for a day. There's an important distinction with nickel that doesn't get talked about enough. North American sulfide deposits produce, a higher quality product with significantly lower environmental footprint than some of the larger Indonesian laterite operations. And so they're really two different type of mining techniques, two different type of ores, obviously much cleaner on the sulfide side. The U.S. government is putting some real funding and policy support. So there's the FAST-41 permitting process, which is available for critical metals development, speeds up permitting, and then also funding from Department of War and Department of Energy. So, if you can find critical metals assets in the U.S. right now, you're in a great position. And so, for a junior like Visionary with 2 critical metals projects in the U.S. in, tier 1 jurisdictions, right, Wyoming and Utah, really puts us in a great position for growth. And I think, this is really a great time to be involved with the company.
Well, let's talk about copper. Let's home in on that for a moment, because it's hit new all-time highs 4 times this year so far, I believe. A lot of other commodities under pressure since the war in Iran began, especially precious metals, but copper looking very resilient here. Why do you think that is? And what is your outlook for the copper space moving forward?
I'm extremely bullish on copper. My brother is a concentrate trader that worked at Glencore for a long time. So I talked to him about, what's going on the supply side, what's going on the demand side. I think I like to simplify things, right? If you look at the big long life mines that have been, underpinning the market for decades, Bingham Canyon, Grasberg, these have been producing for a long time, and there's simply not enough major new discoveries to replace them. So there are discoveries in place, in places like Argentina and Chile, but infrastructure, water availability, permitting can push development timelines years into the future. So there aren't that many near-term opportunities to replace these large producing assets. So I think that's going to be great for the copper prices. And, what it says about exploration also is to replace something of that type of scale, you need to be looking for large deposits, and it needs to be in places where there's infrastructure, jurisdictions where you actually can permit and build. And so that's why we're targeting what we think are some of the best spots in the western United States. So Wyoming, where we made the first nickel sulfide discovery, and then Utah, where we've got a system that we think has a lot of similarities geologically to the Bingham Canyon camp. So it puts us in a great position. And I think it's a big opportunity to make a new discovery in the U.S. And if we do that this year, we'll be rewarded.
Yeah, some great points. Certainly, jurisdiction being very important, and the ability to bring, to get those permits is not easy around the world. And then when you go to the, developing countries, you can run into other issues too with local government, and other jurisdictional risk as well. Now, let's shift to nickel for a moment because you mentioned that crazy spike in the nickel price. How are you feeling about the nickel market today, and where do you see the metal headed as we enter the second half of 2026 here?
Well, I think, we're seeing Indonesian production be curved, right? And that's 60% of global nickel supply. So when you have mines that are curving production because they're operating at a loss, that's a positive sign for the underlying commodity price. And there's really, people don't understand this, but there's two distinct types of nickel ores, right? There's laterites that currently dominate global supply, and they mostly come out of Indonesia, the Philippines, where they're basically strip mining, laterite clays, and it makes a huge environmental footprint. Sulfide deposits, on the other hand, produce a high purity concentrate. It's preferred for battery metals, suitable for stainless steel and electronics as well. And typically, these sulfide deposits carry a much better environmental profile, especially in North America, where we've got some of the strictest environmental regulations. So, that's why we're exploring in the U.S. We're targeting magmatic nickel sulfides in Wyoming. In the near term, we're seeing supply constraints with the higher costs coming out of Indonesia. Longer term, there really just haven't been enough new significant discoveries. A lot of, much like copper, right? A lot of the supergiant deposits that we've seen in the past, Voisey's Bay, Raglan Nickel Camp, Western Australia, Perseverance, Kambalda, Mount Keith, all of those are kind of ending their useful life. So it really creates an opportunity for us to be, building on a new discovery, especially with a major partner involved like Teck.
Let's talk about gold for a moment. Since the war in Iran kicked off, we've seen gold struggle to really break out after hitting new all-time highs and correcting pretty significantly. Where do you see the gold market headed from here? Because it does appear to be breaking out. Perhaps we're going to see much higher prices ahead. I think over the long term, we're going to see the price go to the upper right of the screen. But at this moment we're in right now, how are you feeling about the gold space?
I feel great about it. I mean, I think it's been quite resilient, even after a huge run in the gold price, right? Up to close to $5,000. I mean, we needed a little bit of a pullback there. I think the underlying driver for gold and silver remains the extraordinary levels of government spending that we're seeing globally, and the resulting pressure on currency on purchasing powers. So political uncertainty always adds another layer of support. We have the Iran conflict, the Ukraine conflict. Neither one of those are good thing for the global economy. But I think the obvious places to run to are precious metals, right? That's what people tend to do in uncertain times, especially when you've got inflation playing a major role. So both metals have already had substantial runs. Nickel has lagged, but it tends to be more countercyclical. So 2012, when we were starting to see the end of the bull market in gold and silver, that's when nickel really started to get legs and have its last bull market. So I think we could be entering kind of a similar scenario. I don't want to call the end of the gold bull market yet, but it sets nickel up, I think, for a potential future run. And typically as we see these conflicts unwind, right, or de-escalate, that could be a selling point for gold investors. But I think we're going to see sustained higher prices for a lot longer this time, just because of the inflationary environment that we're in.
Yeah, great thoughts. Visionary Metals is involved in all of the metals we've discussed so far. Why don't you start by giving us an overview of the company? You've alluded to some of your projects, would love to hear more, and lay out your long-term game plan for us.
Yeah, so our goal is to really make tier one discoveries in tier one jurisdictions. So we're focused on commodities that are big enough for the biggest companies. So nickel, copper, copper, gold, porphyry projects, and I think that's what's attracted. We've got Teck in as a 14% shareholder and a strategic alliance partner in Wyoming. So they're hands-on working with us to make new discoveries here. And I think what attracted them was the scale of the targets that we have identified there. We've spent the last 5 years doing grassroots exploration in Wyoming. And that's led us to, an initial discovery, right? We've proven that there's a fertile magmatic nickel sulfide system here. And having Teck in as a partner, it gives us the tools that really most juniors wouldn't have access to. So we flew some big regional airborne electromagnetic surveys. That's basically, like a metal detector hanging from the bottom of a helicopter, right? So it can detect massive sulfide mineralization down to about 300 meters. And we had several areas that lit up, kind of consistent with where we thought they would. And so I think, the work that we had done to date, combined with the fact that, when we started our initial campaign with Teck last summer, we identified several targets in areas that, my chief geologist, Michael Page, kind of predicted they would be in. And Michael is, he was director of exploration for Norilsk at one point in his career. So that's the largest producer of nickel in the world. He's spearheaded exploration programs for BHP, for Ivanhoe, for Goldfields. So he's one of the better known nickel geologists worldwide, and just has seen so much. So we were able to kind of set the geologic model up. And then when we got the targets that we were looking for, these massive conductive bodies, that was a strong indication, that we have a good chance to hit some massive nickel sulfide. And so, we've seen what the electromagnetic surveys have done for discoveries at Talon, at Eagle, right? I mean, the intercept that Talon hit the other day was just massive. And so we're hoping to make, a discovery on par with that, right? And I think we've got a great chance to do it with this year's drill program.
So dive a little bit deeper into the details of your two flagship projects, and how are you allocating resources between both of them, between Wyoming and Utah? Is there a priority on one over the other in terms of where you see most potential in the short term? Would love to hear your strategy there.
We've got a separate team of porphyry experts that are quietly pushing slipstream ahead now. That's our Utah copper gold porphyry system. That's going to be a project for 2027. We're 100% focused on Wyoming right now. And, the drill bit is going to start turning here in about a week, 10 days. So, I think what's exciting about this year's program in Wyoming is that, so little background. So 2022, we made a nickel sulfide discovery. We hit 20 meters at 0.4% nickel in our third core hole ever at the King Solomon project. And then, we kind of took a step back and started doing more regional exploration. We figured if we were making a new discovery, we should probably identify, what else is in this district, right? And really kind of cover a lot of ground to make sure that that we're understanding the system, that we're identifying more targets. And so we identified those targets in 23, started talking to Teck in 24, and signed a deal with them last August, and have hit the ground running since then. So a lot of that early stage work that you have to carry out when you're doing grassroots exploration is behind us now. And now we've got, targets that we can model in 3D. There's 8 of them. And, three at King Solomon, three conductive bodies we've identified there, kind of in the vicinity where we hit our initial discovery hole. And then at Tin Cup, which is about 10 kilometers to the west, we have five separate conductive bodies. Some of those are up to 1 kilometer in length and several hundred meters wide. So, we're seeing all the things that you would look for in a magmatic nickel sulfide system at this stage. And so that success has led to an initial or additional investment from Teck, and then allowed us to go out and raise $7.5 million this past month.
Could you dive a little deeper as well into that relationship with Teck Resources, how much leverage that kind of provides you in terms of on the operational side of things? And as you advance your projects, is there an option there for Teck to take a larger stake and perhaps become more hands-on in the future?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think for a junior company, resources are always finite, especially when you're conducting greenfields exploration, right? And we self-funded a lot of that. I've participated in every financing that we've done. We've got kind of a core group of about 20 guys that have participated in all the financings that we've done. And so that's kind of allowed us to create the groundwork that led to Teck's investment, right? And what Teck gives us is access to all the tools that what's soon to be a top 5 copper producer globally after the merger with Anglo. So it's technical expertise, great geophysics team, right? So we have a full-time geophysicist on the project. We have 2 full-time geologists and a senior geologist that's overseeing the project. So it really allows us to do a lot more than we could just as a junior. It would have been tough for us to raise money to do, a 1 million acre airborne EM survey, and get a top-notch team to do the ground EM survey afterward. So we've gotten both equity financing and non-dilutive funding. Teck does reserve the right to earn up to 70% in our 2 flagship assets, so King Solomon and Tin Cup, and they, to do that, they have to exercise an option and spend an additional $6 million on top of what we've already spent to date per project. So, if we make a discovery this year, I would imagine that there's a very good chance that Teck would exercise, and then we get into a development scenario where they're 70% and we're 30%, but we've already got $6 million toward development drilling on each project. So I think it's a good place to be. I look at the recent transaction between Talon and Lundin Mining on the Eagle deposit, right? And so people forget, not too long ago, Talon was a sub $50 million company, right? And that was just kind of the value of the Tamarack asset that they had, and stuff in Michigan as well. But really having the team in place, the backing of a major, I think can really add value in a discovery and development scenario. And so that's what we've seen. Today Talon's an $850 million company, and they continue to grow their asset base, right? And so we hope that we're just kind of at an earlier stage, right? Visionary's at 15 million market cap right now. So there's a value proposition there. And I think with Teck's involvement in an active drill program, with 8 separate targets that we're drilling this year, really puts us in a nice position to have a chance to make it more discoveries and really kind of grow our asset base and justify re-rating in the market.
Can you shed some more light on the team behind Visionary Metals and how you plan to leverage their expertise? And we'll start with your own background and why you're the right CEO to be leading the helm.
For one, I have a long history in Wyoming. I come from a family that's been 3 generations in the mining industry. So, it started with uranium in Wyoming, with some of the first uranium producers. And then, we've been in coal. I started my career in Guyana, working on a big gold discovery down there called Turaparu. And that's, I think, a 7.1 million ounce M&I resource now that Aris is pushing forward. I brought on Michael Page as director of exploration. I was surprised that he joined. But one of the things that he said was, look, I need to come to site and actually see what you've got there, first. And so he came out, as a consultant, really liked what he saw in the geology, kind of reminded him of some of the geology you see in Western Australia, where you have these supergiant deposits like Perseverance and Camp Alda. So my background was in kind of greenstone gold in Guyana. Mike's background has been in, nickel, but nickel of all types, and he has especially expertise in the Archean nickel systems that are similar in age to what we have here in Wyoming. I think from a technical perspective, we've got a really strong team. We try to run a tight ship. All the money that we raise typically goes into the ground, or has, at least to this point. We're actually getting out and doing a bit more marketing now, because I think that we're at a really exciting point in the company's history, where we really have the opportunity to grow our shareholder base, grow our market cap on the heels of a big discovery here. So it's an exciting time to be an investor in Visionary. I think, with the share structure, tightened up, it's really has room to run now.
Let's talk about cash on the balance sheet. How much cash is on hand right now? How much runway does that give you? And what are the plans for raising more capital as needed moving forward?
Yeah. So we just raised $7.5 million in our last financing. That's going to give us solid runway for the next 12 months. It was a great deal. We had over 150 investors in that financing. So really trying to work on, creating liquidity for our shareholders, creating some price appreciation with news flow, and then being aggressive with our exploration plans. So we've got the runway in place. I think, when it comes to financing, we're opportunistic. We don't need cash right now after our recent financing. But, if we see opportunities to raise at higher prices that we think allow us, to push projects forward at a higher rate, take advantage of the great copper markets that we're in, for instance, we'll always look at those opportunities and consider them.
What would you say are the main catalysts that shareholders of Visionary Metals should be looking forward to in terms of news flow, future milestones for the company that could provide a re-rating on the share price?
We're starting a drill program in about a week. We've got 8 different targets. The targets are very large. Drilling is typically where you see the most value creation in the mining space. So it's discovery and building on those discoveries. And so King Solomon, we're building on 2022 hit and trying to define some higher grade zones in that system that could really expand, and put us kind of on the track of an initial resource, right? At Tin Cup, that's an asset that's never been drilled. We see all the things that we hope to see, when you're looking for magmatic nickel sulfide systems. So we see the ultramafic rocks. We see, big conductive bodies of rock associated with surface nickel and copper mineralization. So these are big targets that we're going to be drilling this year. So there's going to be a lot of news flow. And I think it's a value opportunity. The nickel commodity price has been depressed for the last couple of years. Guys like Rick Rule and Eric Sprott are now talking about nickel and saying, hey, there's some real value in nickel explorers, especially nickel sulfide in North America. So I think we've got a nice chance to get a re-rating. And, if I look back at my career, I'm also an investor, right? I mean, I've never made a 10x return on a $100 million company. It's always the ones that, are 10 to 20 million valuation, that on a new discovery can go to 100, 200 million pretty quick. And so I like our chances with this year's drill program, and we're excited to start, proving ourselves right on the exploration work that we've done, and creating some real value for shareholders with the drill program this year.
Great. Well, I'm going to put a link in the description below to Visionary Metals' website as well as social media for people who want to follow along with the company. Wes, fantastic conversation. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks a lot, Jesse.
Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.